Hi, welcome back to Miss Candy's Land. So, the last video I did was about unconditional love, and I said that I was gonna do more videos on the emotions. And the reason is because in a lot of videos, like where I'm showing you how to do good rehabilitation or handle behavior problems with your children, is I say parents who can't handle their emotions or caregivers who can't handle their emotions can't help children learn to handle their emotions, right? So when I'm saying handling your emotions, I'm basically just trying to tell you what I mean by that, right? Like what emotions am I specifically talking about and how do you handle them, right? So the crazy thing is there's only two emotions. There's only two. There's unconditional love, and that goes down a grid line all the way to hate. And in the middle is all those emotions in the middle, like obsession and spite and all these things that love and hate can create together. But the other emotion, the negative emotion, is fear. Every negative emotion comes from fear. Okay? It is a byproduct of it, or it is a cause of it. It's just like the underlying, like fear is the culprit of all these symptoms that will follow, which would be like anxiety and anxiety, anger, sad, regret, even, right? We're talking fear is the culprit to all of these things. Most crimes that are committed out of fear. And I know people are like, what do you mean? Like if your house gets robbed, which mine's been, you would say, how can you say they were afraid? They were so bold to come up in my house and rob it, right? Because they were in fear of lack. They didn't think they had enough. Greed is also just a symptom of fear, because you're afraid you're not going to have enough. You're afraid someone else has more than you and that you won't compare. Competition is based on fear. Right? And I know if you got a bunch of sports fans out here, you're going to be like, oh, competition, there's nothing wrong with good competition. You shouldn't be in competition with anybody. If you're watching a sport, both of those teams should be celebrating each other, right? If it's good competition, then there's no loser, right? There's someone who got more points than the other, but nobody's a loser, right? You only want to call yourself a winner because you're afraid that you don't measure up. You're afraid that you're not enough, right? So when we understand that there's only unconditional love grid line that bleeds into all the stuff that comes with hate and love, all the different emotions, and then there's only fear and stability, right? And all the emotions that come with fear and stability. Peace is in both of those. Patience is in both of those, right? Why don't some people have patience? Because they're afraid of the outcome, right? They're afraid of waiting. They're afraid if they don't say what they mean right then, their point won't be made, right? So again, anytime you're dealing with a negative emotion, you need to understand that fear is the culprit. And if you can close your eyes, even in your highest anxiety moment, and say, okay, what am I afraid of right now? Okay, what is scaring me right now that's causing this anxiety, right? Or why do I feel the need to take from others? What am I afraid of by just trying to get it on my own, right? Doing my own thing instead of just taking it, right? So, and that's a really important one, because when I said in the other video, one of those things that you punch, and it just pops back up and it pops back up. That's because I can manage my fear. And in all these videos, I'm not trying to come across as someone of perfection, because that is in no stretch of the imagination true. I get upset, I get angry, I get afraid myself, and I have to bring myself back down. That's why I can tell you how to do it yourself. Because, I can be in a fear moment and then I can bring myself back in enough time that it's not noticed, right? Or maybe I need to do some word vomit to another grown-up, right? It's going to be short-lived, right? Because I'm going to come back to the love and I'm going to make amends, inside myself and whatever I need to do if my word salad was a little bit harsh, right? And that's not really something I do a lot, but, I don't really talk to other human beings in a hateful manner. I mean, there were times in my life when I did, I felt like I had to take up for myself. Again, fear. Fear of being unseen, fear of being unheard, fear of being taken advantage of, fear of someone saying something that isn't true and people believing it, right? Well, once that gets done to you so many times, that fear subsides. And I think a lot of people that I come across, when they first meet me, first of all, they would say, wow, you're so kind, right? But then eventually they'll take my kindness for a weakness, right? Because it appears that way. I mean, who does that? Who would bend over backwards? Who would do this for free? Who would do that? I hear it all the time. You know, oh, you're such an angel. I hear it all the time, right? But what it is I'm in control of my fear, right? I'm unconditionally loving, and I'm in control of my fear. So it's easy for me to do extra for people because I don't feel like I'm missing anything, right? Where someone else be like, why would you do all that for someone? Why would someone do all that for something, right? Because they're in fear that they would receive less. And most of the time I do. I receive much less than I give out. But I've already made peace with that because that's just, you know, we could all sit around and only do what the other person's going to do and live our eye for an eye life, but you're going to stay in that cycle of fear and all those yucky, that's the muck, you know, that's what just cycles and cycles and cycles, right? Also, I come with, cause I like to play with kids and dogs and, you know, I got this Southern accent, you know, from where I'm from. And some people will also, mistake my childlike demeanor as ignorance. Right. And I used to just stand up for myself and, no, I'm not stupid. I'm not weak. Right. But I found that once I was whole inside myself and it's like, well, it's really none of my business if they think that, right? I mean, I'm going to do what I'm going to do and my intentions are pure and intentions are everything. I've said it before. That's where karma comes from. I'll get to that in a second. But, you know, if my intentions are pure and I really just want to help, I don't have anything to be afraid of. I don't have anything to be afraid of. I'm not going to be in lack, right? Because I don't fear it. Okay. And the karma part is if you see someone, you know, like me, I'll give away a lot of things, you know, or I will do a lot of extra things to just because I want people to know they're loved, you know, and it's, you know, with no strings attached, just, you know, you need help. Let me jump in and help you. Okay. It doesn't matter. We'll figure out the rest later. Right. By doing that, I would get, because my intentions aren't on what I'm going to receive, it's what you're going to receive. And so that's how karma works. If you're saying, oh, I'm going to, you know, do these extra things for this person because I want to get the good karma, you've already started with a string attached, right? The idea is to do things out of innocence, right? To be completely innocent in it. Like, oh my gosh, I see this person who needs help. So I'm just going to help them. You don't think about anything coming your way. It's just help. It's just because I can, right? And I know that's hard for a lot of people because we're in fear. We're not on that unconditional, you know, love grid, or we are, but we're somewhere in the middle where we make people prove their love for us all the time. So it's not true love, right? Because it's contingent on, do they love me? If you're asking someone to prove that they love you all the time, then that means you don't truly love them because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they love me back. It doesn't matter. That's not what drives my love. So once you get that understood, your brain automatically will click in this fear thing that I'm talking about, where you start to notice when you're, you know, doing things that don't bring you joy, or you're feeling things that are upsetting. If you go through that feeling of every reason why you feel that way, you're going to get back to fear. And once you get back to what's you're fearing, you can logically take that down. And so a good way to say that is, if you're afraid of wrecking your car, right? You're driving and you have all this anxiety driving. I've met a lot of people that are having, driving anxiety. And you're afraid, you don't go anywhere because you're afraid you might get an accident. You're afraid of this, you're afraid of that. And you're calling it driving anxiety, right? If you sat down and thought about it and took yourself all the way down to, okay, so you might get in a wreck. Okay, then what? What will that happen? Oh, my car will be totaled. Okay, and then what? Then you'll call your insurance company, right? Or if they say, I might get hurt. Okay, but then you'll go to the doctor and you'll get better, right? Like you can just sit and go down this gamut. And I do it in 30 seconds, like everything just, really fast, and then back up to the worst fear. And so that's what I'm bringing with children and dogs and families is they immediately know that I'm someone who's secure. I have all this self-confidence that no matter what comes at us, I can handle it. And that is because I'm managing my fear. I'm alchemizing. Back in the day when I had to go to people's houses, and I mean, there's some sketchy situations that I had to go into. Where I would go places that other caregivers wouldn't go. They would just say, no, that's too scary for me, right? I could go in there and I could take myself down the road of everything terrible that could happen, like within 30 seconds, and what I would do. And then I'm right back, right? And so I'm always, it's my stature. Okay, whatever happens, we're gonna take this head on, right? I know that sounds hard, but when you start practicing it, so you start thinking, what's the worst that could happen? And I know a lot of people would say death, and I'd be like, well, I'm not afraid to die. I'm not afraid to meet my maker. I know that's the grand finale of the whole reason that I'm here, and I've made peace with that, right? And I would always say, you can kill me, but you can't eat me, right? My essence will leave this body, right? You will never get my essence. And that's what I protect the most. That's what's mine. That's what no one can have. And so it doesn't fear anything because it knows it's always free and it's always going to be free. And sometimes that's like the best exercise. If you're someone who suffers from a lot of anxiety, it keeps you from doing the things you need to do, or it keeps you from your happiness or your joy. Or it makes you do terrible things like steal from people you claim you love and or hurt people who try to help you. Then you can sit here and do that. You can go down, you can start going down and finding, why would I do something like that? Or why won't I do this? Why am I afraid of heights? What's the worst that could happen? And I mean, I can't tell people, don't be afraid of death or things like that. 'Cause I mean, it is what it is. But at some point you will make peace with the worst that could happen. You will. It's inevitable. If you are doing all the things that we've talked about in these videos, if you're alchemizing, transmuting, paying attention to how you love so that you know where your hands are on the grid. And if you're in a good place and you're getting the good love that's coming back and you're alchemizing and you're transmuting and you're getting unconditional love, you will notice the fear. It will just pop out. It'll be like, oh, well, that's a fear, right? And I always like to say, fear is a demon, man. It's like, if love is God, then fear is the devil, right? And that's all there is, because everything good lives within love and everything terrifying and awful lives within fear. And once you start to understand this concept, you can hold yourself better. And like I said, when you walk into a room, with a child or someone who themselves lives in fear, right? How can you help someone who's in constant anxiety and fear if you are yourself? You'll notice once you start realizing, or going down that gamut and saying, okay, there's nothing to be afraid of, right? I know exactly everything that could go wrong. And of course we can always expect the unexpected, because that's part of it, right? But that's where faith comes in. And that's where you're on that unconditional love grid, that you have faith that you're a good person and your intentions are pure and all you want to do is help and you're doing your very best to control your fear. You're going to put off a vibe, a vibration, a frequency to others, whether they think you're weak, whether they think that you're an easy mark, none of that matters, because you can walk in and be like, well, if that's what you think, then you operate that way. And then the chips will just fall where they fall, right? Because once you get into this light, you're protected. You know that you are protected. You know that you are favored because you are trying to have the best intentions, knowing that you're not perfect, knowing that you're going to make mistakes, but that you love yourself anyway because God loves you too, right? And you are doing your very best to manage the evil, the beast, whatever you want to call it, the fear that causes you to make the bad choices, right? So I hope this is helpful. Again, when I'm saying manage your emotions, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about managing your fear and getting to a point where kids trust you. You don't even have to speak. You just have to come in and they see safety. They see safety because you're not afraid. You're not afraid like maybe the other person, like guilt comes from fear, because you're afraid you're not enough. Regret comes from fear because you're afraid of the consequences of something you might have done, or you're afraid someone will think something because of the way you did something. It's all fear. And when you bring that to a child, they don't take you seriously because they don't believe that you can keep them safe. But when you do get that fear under control, which controls all those other negative emotions, you won't believe how different people will look at you, how easy it will be for you to direct a child that maybe didn't even stop when you were talking, right? They just barrel through you, right? You'll notice that, oh, I noticed you. Oh, I see you there. Hi. It will change. It will change so dramatically. You won't believe it. You won't believe it. But that is internal work. Everything that I do, it does require people to do work internally, right? So if I'm going to shine the light, if this resonates with you that, yeah, I have a lot of anxiety, and you sit down and you start thinking, why do I have anxiety about this? What's the worst that could happen? And you start doing that. I think that you're going to find peace lives there. And I wish you well on that. And remember, don't be afraid, because everything's not your fault. You are loved, and I love you too.